My name is Malikkah Rollins, and I'm the Director of Industry and Education at Doc NYC. And welcome to our final screening in the Spring Doc NYC Selects series. This evening, we will be watching Deaf President Now. And, oh yeah, clap, please, clap beforehand, yes. You can clap before, you can clap during, you can clap after. Clapping is allowed at any point. And we really want to thank Apple Original Films for collaborating on this event and bringing this film to us. After the film, we'll have a Q&A with the director, Davis Guggenheim, myself, and Michael Kaufer, who is very active in the Deaf Film Festival community. And how many of you have been to our amazing festival in November? I assume all the hands are going to go up, right? Oh my God, y'all, come on. This is not good. All right. When November comes, and I ask this question again, you're all going to have your hands up because you're all going to be there. And I say that because clearly you must have some affinity for documentaries because you're here. And every November for 8 days, we run an amazing festival called Doc NYC. It's the largest documentary film festival in the country. And it is just chock full of amazing, amazing films, both shorts and feature-length films. Along with the festival, we also have a really phenomenal 8-day professional development conference called Doc NYC Pro, which I run along with year-round programming like Selects, but professional development for documentary filmmakers, both online and in person. And you can find all of this information on our website. So thank you and enjoy the film. I found it quite riveting. I have to say I couldn't really wait to the end to see what happened, so I actually looked online to see what actually happened. Like, did they actually choose a deaf president after all these years? I just couldn't wait. It's truly riveting. So I hope you all enjoy it and definitely stay for the Q&A after. I think you know pretty much a lot about American civil rights movements and you realize, oh shit, I actually don't know a whole lot at all. It was very humbling, very humbling. So again, my name is Malikkah Rollins, and I'm the Director of Industry and Education at Doc NYC. I'm going to have Michael introduce himself in a moment, but the man in the green shirt is Davis Guggenheim, who is the co-director of the film. And you may know Davis from quite a while ago when he directed An Inconvenient Truth, and more recently, Still with Michael J. Fox, which was 2 years ago. Michael, why don't you say a couple of sentences about who you are, why you're up here?
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Kaufer. I am a Manhattanite. I live here in New York City. This, of course, is very important to me. I graduated from Gallaudet myself back in 1977. And I would like to thank Doc NYC, thank you here, because it's very important that we do have a deaf person on this stage right now. And originally that wasn't the case until Malikkah reached out to me and got me here, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And I mean, this is showcasing our world and showcasing who we are, so thank you.
So Michael and I are going to alternate questions for Davis, and then we will have about 5 minutes at the end for audience questions, so please start thinking about what you'd like to ask, because we would love to hear from you. So Davis, can you walk us through your own motivation for and personal connection to this film and the overarching theme of deaf activism?
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So my co-director, Niall DeMarco, who also went to Gallaudet and is deaf, usually is with me. So usually I defer to him in this. But the project was brought to my company as a scripted project by Niall. He had produced a series at Gallaudet called Deaf U, and thought this would be a great movie. And we had a fancy writer write a script, and all these other directors had passed, and I was the last stop. And they're like, well, maybe Davis would direct this, and as a scripted movie. And I read it, and I was like, is any of this true? Because it was like Jerry waking up naked next to his girlfriend, and people are banging on the window, and things like that. And I was like, and then he's so angry, Jerry burns down the lacrosse shed. And I was like, is this, so, I was like, let's look at what really happened. And let's see if there's an archive for this, because I'm embarrassed to say I'm a history major. I grew up in Washington, D.C. My first internship was at Nightline in 1986, 2 years before what you just saw. And I don't remember any of this. So that was my big takeaway. It was like, this is an incredible story that, at least in the hearing world, has been forgotten.
Okay, thank you. I would like to ask you a question. How did your own understanding of the deaf identity, how was that incorporated throughout the filmmaking process? Oh wait, no, sorry, let me go back. I'm jumping ahead. Sorry, that was your question. Okay, so can you tell me the work related to co-directing with Niall? What was the biggest takeaway from that experience?
Well, when I told my daughter Stella that I was thinking about co-directing, she said, "Dad, that's a terrible idea. You don't listen to anybody." It's been a long journey, and it really is. It's strange as a director. You're kind of taught to be singular, and when you're telling a story, that's what makes a movie special, is having a singular point of view. But both Niall and I recognize that we've needed each other very badly, and you'll see parts of the movie where I couldn't speak to what should be on the screen. Only Niall could. And then there are other times when only I was an advocate for the hearing part of the movie. You know, when we were mixing in Berkeley, I was saying, "Niall, do you want to come?" And he's like, "Why would I come to the mix?" You know.
What's a mixtape is for folks to
Sorry,
know.
so where you mix the sound, right? So we would have to do these things where I'd say, well, this is what the music is. I would say, Niall, this is what the music's doing here. It's sounding like this, it feels like this. And he'd have to believe me. And vice versa. Like he would have to say, this is what it was feeling like at this moment at Gallaudet. This is what the experience was like, and I'd have to trust him. And so it really was a very dependent, in a good way, collaboration. So and I was very changed by it and moved and loved it, and I wish he was here because he's an equal partner in telling the story.
And I would like to add, and I would also like to thank you. I used a hearing aid myself my whole life because my mom told me that I had to use my hearing aid, and I still do use it. And I do hear sound, similar to what Jerry had said. So what was your experience working with Niall? Was there any challenges, for example, if there was no sound? So I was sitting in the back watching, and I noticed there were moments where there was no sound, but there was still sign language going. And that really just gave me this burst of love, and that represented my world so perfectly. So was that a challenge as a director, trying to capture those moments?
Well, because we were two different directors and we had two different experiences and two different audiences, in the deaf world, this is a core story. You know, it's core to deaf identity. Would you agree with that? The story of Gallaudet and the university, but also deaf president now. And so we
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
So the breakthrough for us was, what if we yank the audience very uncomfortably between the two perspectives? You see sometimes where, like at the very end, I just was watching it, it's like your music is playing and people are celebrating, and then it cuts to silence when Jerry says, you know, "Are we nothing? We will be heard." I mean, but Niall said this, and I agreed. The movie should be just completely silent at the end, and let the audience insist that the audience be in that point of view.
This is you. Oh, okay.
Collaboration, see?
Oh my God.
We are co-directors up here. What were some of the creative or ethical tensions that came up in telling a story so deeply rooted in a community's activism and identity?
Well, when Niall first, we sat down with Niall and he said, you know, there's an expression, "nothing about us without us." And it's not an expression that I had never heard, but that is in the disability movement. Too often Hollywood tells these stories, and it's all a bunch of hearing people. And so we had more than 40 people on our crew, top to bottom, who were deaf or hard of hearing. And that had its own challenges. It was more expensive, honestly, and that's something, but Apple happily paid for that. It was harder, it was slower, but in the end, I think it was richer because we came to some of these interesting creative choices that I would never have thought of. I didn't realize I was talking the whole time.
That's you? Yeah.
Okay, again, working with Niall DeMarco, how did you navigate the perspective of the lived experience within the deaf community and showcasing that?
We were, and I'd be very interested to hear your point of view of watching the movie, having gone to Gallaudet in the years before this, and what the experience was like. I've heard that if you were deaf at Gallaudet, well, most people were deaf at Gallaudet. Some people weren't because there's an interpretation school. But when you went into the administration building, not just the president, but many of the administrators didn't know American Sign Language. And many teachers didn't know American Sign Language. So I'm curious.
I would say 80%.
Did not know.
Yeah, 80% did not know sign language.
Oh my God.
So, in one sense, it's a symbolic thing of having a deaf president, but it's also a fundamental, how a very deeply cultural thing and a functioning thing of like having someone a school leadership in every level that you can teachers that you can actually talk to. So.
Do you want to add some?
Oh, sure. So I grew up with hearing parents, and I would say, this may not be the exact statistic, but roughly at least 80, if not more, deaf people are born to hearing parents. And so I grew up learning to lip read, trying to speak. I went to school without using American Sign Language, and then when I attended Gallaudet University, I thought that was normal up until that point. But now, if you tried me to go back in time, I would require every deaf student to sign. So it's very sad that I didn't have that experience, and I'm happy that today things are better at Gallaudet, and there are more people who sign now than there were in my time.
And I don't believe, I'm curious what you think, but from what I've heard, it's not a coincidence that all 4 leaders were deaf of deaf, meaning their parents were deaf, and in most cases 4 generations. So they acquired American Sign Language when they were born, and some say that language is acquired much faster than spoken language because the motor skills of hands are anyway. But also they were deeply embedded into deaf culture right away, as opposed to 80% of people like yourself whose parents and your parents.
Actually,
Yeah, please, yeah.
Yeah, growing up with deaf parents. So I was with hearing parents until there was a deaf in the family, which happened in high school. I always went to a hearing public school. Just like Greg, I tried my best to pay attention in class, but really I was missing most of what was happening. And then I would have some other teachers that would give me one-on-one time, help me with speech and with homework and things of that nature, but I still wouldn't understand what exactly was going on until I finally went to a deaf school when I was a junior, and that's when I started learning sign language. And within 3 months, I was already signing, and I knew more in that time than what I had learned speaking my entire life up until this point. And then once I transferred to Gallaudet for college, and everyone was signing, and I could sign with the other students around me, that's what I call a country club in our time. It was very much a country club type of experience.
Would you say that there's something core to the movie that's missing from your experience? This movie, yeah.
No, pretty much you got it all. This is exactly what we went through. Especially speaking of King, he was my psychology teacher. I adored it.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. And was your feeling that, sorry to I'm doing the cue now, sorry. Much more comfortable for me, but I'll stop. But once he became president, there was still a large portion of the Gallaudet community that did not accept him. Wow. There were protests after the fact. How did you feel about him as a president?
Well, when I had him as my psychology teacher, we still didn't recognize him as deaf. We more so recognized him as hard of hearing, if you will. And still to this day, anytime I would meet him or see him, I still would think that he was hard of hearing. But that deaf culture aspect, it is there. He definitely has a deaf heart, but he doesn't represent the deaf community, the larger deaf community, those who identify as deaf culturally. To me, let me explain the cultural difference. Like big D deaf represents cultural identity, whereas little d deaf more so is so little d means you're not really within the community, but you are deaf or hard of hearing.
Thank you. Helpful.
Did anything surprise you, or? Oh, 5 minutes, okay, oh man, okay, never mind. Let's go to the audience question, much more, adding.
Oh, and let me just add one more tidbit. I just want to share something really important with you all. Did you see that guy who was in the car, who had the hearing aid in the TV studio when he took the hearing aid off? Remember that scene? I would like to let you know, that was not Greg. Sorry, I just spilled the secret. That was not actually Greg in that clip, but that was his son, who looks exactly like his father, by the way. Oh, and his son's name is Charlton. And he looks exactly like his father. And that was who was in that clip. Okay, sorry, questions?
Yeah.
So,
We'll repeat them as well.
one of the most striking moments, first of all, I know that none of you represents Gallaudet, and perhaps this is better answered by somebody from Gallaudet, but one of the most striking moments in the film for me was when, I guess it was Pat Buchanan, says, well, 70% of the funds for Gallaudet come from the American people, and what if those were to be cut off? And for me, at this moment in time, the notion of somebody threatening to cut off the 70% of the funding for an organization that he didn't believe in was very chilling. And I'm wondering how much of Gallaudet's money now comes from the government, and I'm wondering whether we know how the Trump administration feels about that.
Did everyone hear that question? Okay, yeah. I don't know, but what do you know more?
We're talking about it before.
We're talking about it in the
walked
lobby,
in.
yeah. Wait, I think
Yeah, so up until just a few months ago, I would still say roughly 60 to 70% of Gallaudet's funding is still pretty secure. However, Gallaudet, from my understanding, I mean, don't quote me on this, it seems that they did lose $22,000 worth of funding recently, which is pretty insignificant. I mean, they have over $100,000 per year, so 22 is not a huge cut, but I will find out the exact answer for you later, though.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
But I think everyone's a little on edge across.
Yeah. Yes, right here in the pink shirt.
I really appreciated the way you brought moralism in about hitting it over the head, and wanted to know just a little bit more about your thought process working with Niall about creating the narrative for the movie, because it seemed like there were, you just want to know more about that, like how you decided to come to that arc for the film and make those kinds of decisions.
Well, one of the big choices was to say the whole movie takes place in these 7 days. So you start when that box is dropped. And literally, there was a meeting scheduled for them to announce the new president in the gym, and instead of having an announcement, they dropped this box with all the leaflets. So we just made it like, what if the movie takes place during this week? Like, it's a fast-moving train, and then as you go along the way, you learn stuff. And the oralism stuff came up as part of the students' experience. They're meeting in a hotel room with Zinzer and I King, and this is where the administration is saying, hey, sit down with the students, and meet Zinzer so that you can so she can convince you that she's awesome. They didn't provide an interpreter.
I know. Can you imagine?
Oh my God.
So I King actually becomes the interpreter because he can he's fully deaf, but can kind of interpret. Anyway, that sort of ignorance and the idea of what the characters told me is they just saw her and she was just talking.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was this whole thing of like, you're not even, I think the quick answer is that oralism is a sense of like, just be mainstream, just be like us, you know, and let's pretend that deaf culture, which is this beautifully rich, complex world, you know, just let's take you, let's banish that and make you be like us, you know, that's the idea of it.
I'd like to say,
Other
I'd
questions?
like to
Yeah,
follow
there's
up.
someone right there.
Just to build on that a bit, one aspect of the film that I thought was really interesting was the dynamic between inclusion and exclusion. It seemed like a core on either end of that needed to be appreciated was just respect, like mutual respect for people, and that sometimes there wasn't. But is there any other way that you thought about sort of that interesting dynamic between inclusion, exclusion, between hearing and deaf, or even just within the people maybe within the deaf community, outside the deaf community, and how to strike the right balance for what's best for the people that this story included?
It's a great question. The thing that truly blew my mind in this experience is I talked to people who know Spillman, the chairman of the board, and she's still alive. And everyone says to a person that she's a very kind person who had the best intentions for the deaf community in Gallaudet. Isn't that interesting? And that sometimes you imagine prejudice as this sort of hard core hate that you're gonna apply on a culture. But actually it was finely applied. You know, so that kind of the disrespect that you're talking about is applied by people who think they're doing the right thing. But good intentions are not enough. And like when the things that, like when this is my last Q&A on this 5-month tour, but like every time I came up with Niall, someone hands him a microphone.
Oh, no.
Right? And I mean, those are good people. Those are good people with good intentions. It happened to you. Like, right? So, and I did it 1,000 times, just thinking, oh, I know, I'm got a good intentions. I'm gonna make a film about Gallaudet. And so I actually think that most people want to do the right thing, but they're just, it's their sort of ignorance and their willful ignorance that kind of makes them. So that's how I would frame it for myself anyway. And like, I feel like at the end of this process, I know less than I now am much more aware of how little I know about deaf culture.
Okay, last question, right here.
Well, I would like to say thank you very much. I got my master's degree in deaf education and I'm hard of hearing. I thought you did a beautiful job by having 2 directors, one who heard, one who did not, because I saw, like when Zinzer went up and was going to speak, and to picture it, so all you could see was this. I thought, brilliant! I mean, what you did, I hope everybody sees this film. It is absolutely marvelous insight into both the deaf world and the hearing world. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's a lovely way to end our evening together.
Thank you so much.
And can we please,
Beautiful closing, thank you.
can we give the amazing Paulina like applause for, that's really hard to do what she's doing, y'all, because she's doing it for 2
You
people.
only have the one, so yeah, she did a great job, thank you. This is from Michael, by the way.
And thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Michael, for joining us so much.
And to Doc NYC, thank you so much.
Thanks, y'all. Have a lovely evening.